even though he had slapped me down very hard, was so wonderful that that's really all I cared about. I had natural ambition and so forth as a dancer, and so, but I didn't give any. I didn't care, and so that was 1952. Okay, and about 3 days later, I believe it was 3 days later, something like that, he was still in New York, and my phone rang very early in the morning. Like, I don't get up at 6:30 in the morning. But the phone rang, and I answered it, and it was Miss Krask. I hardly recognized her voice. And she said, this very severe voice came over the phone and said, I have a message for you from Baba. And my blood ran cold. And I said, yes, ma'am. And she said, Baba said, tell that boy he's put his head in a noose. When Baba needs a new coat, he is to make it. But he is not to make it until I tell him to. Well, okay. And that was that. And that was 1952. I didn't get to go to the men's Sahavas in 54. I was under contract. That's another story. And but I came 56. And he was coming to America again. And in my particular case, and I cannot explain this at all, every time Baba came, announced that he came, I put myself through some kind of torment for about 6 months before he came. And I had migraines anyway, very bad, very, very severe migraines. And for about 6 months, I had just terrible, terrible migraines. And I didn't want to come again. Every time I never wanted to come to see Baba. And if you can figure that out, good for you, because I've been at it for 50 years and I can't figure it out. But that's the way it was. I knew I would come. I knew without doubt I would come, but I didn't want to. I mean, I really didn't want to. And I was lying in bed very late at night, probably early morning, with an excruciating migraine. And I believe that's the time that Baba had given us orders, and I failed in those orders. And I had the guilt like the earth around me. I was carrying this weight of guilt. And, but that night, with the pain in the migraine and so forth, I didn't have a visitation from Baba, but he did something. What he did was take the guilt, which was here. That's all I could see. I couldn't think of Baba properly. I don't know what proper is, but never mind. I couldn't. All I could see was that guilt. And he took the guilt, and he didn't take it away. He just moved it and put it back here. So I still had it, and I still carried it around, but it was not there. And when I finally saw him, and you see, every time I saw him, it was absolutely fabulous. I can't describe it because something unique, you can't say, well, it was like this or like that, because it wasn't like anything. It was completely and totally of itself. And I remember Baba had warned us that he had had an accident and that he was not well, and not to expect this or that or the other of him. And I walked into the lagoon cabin, And there was Baba sitting in an aura of absolute radiance. He was absolutely beautiful again. And the first thing he said to me, he said, "Oh, you're looking very handsome." And anyway, he was always playing wonderful, wonderful games. And some of them were rather severe, but never mind. So that's 1956. And we stayed with him in Myrtle Beach, I forget how many days, sometimes. And we saw him sometimes in the morning, and then we would go to the barn and he would give a dissertations, which, that's another story. Me and discourses. I mean, I really had trouble with that. Baba was, enough. I mean, he didn't have to explain the universe to me or the hierarchy, spiritual hierarchy. I just, what's the difference? There he was. And he was so incredible that who needed any more? But people did want discourses, and he gave them. And I had to sit there thinking, you cannot go to sleep. You cannot go to sleep, no matter what, because we had the discourses in the barn, and the barn was, and the chairs were sat in arranged in a semicircle, and Baba sat in front of the fireplace, and there were never enough chairs, so the dancers always sat on the floor anyway. And I sat on the floor, slightly behind him and to his left. So I was looking at all the people, and so I had to look normal anyway, but like I was listening. But anyway, I don't know how to get started on that.
Discourses.
Oh, one early morning, again, very, very early in the morning, when I was rooming, Peter Saul and I roomed with Don Stevens. That was a joy. We really had fun and games all the time. But anyway, there was a knock on the door, and someone, and I went to the door, and they said, "Baba wants to see you." That always made me very uncomfortable. There was a little railing at that time down at the Myrtle Beach, made of cedar. It was about that high. And Baba had forbidden us to sit on it because it was full of chiggers. And I came out and waited in line because there were people in line waiting to see Baba. Phyllis Frederick was there, and Miss Krask was there with Ruth White. And because Ruth White chastised me, I was with someone, and we laughed very politely. We laughed, and Ruth White turned around like a cobra. Yes, Ruth was 100 then, I think 99 or something, and she said, "One does not laugh in the presence of the master." I said, "Okay, you got it, I'm serious." And anyway, my turn came. The first thing Baba said was, "Sit down." He was sitting on the railing, and he said, "Sit down."
He was sitting on the railing.
So I sat down on his right side, and it was a beautiful morning. It had rained at night, and the dew was very heavy on the leaves still, and things were in bloom, and it was very green. And Myrtle Beach is very, very beautiful. And Baba said to me, "Tex, isn't this a beautiful place?" And I said, "Oh yes, Baba." And these are not his exact words, but he said something that, "Didn't I do a good job?" And I said, "Oh yes, Baba, you did indeed." And he pointed and he said, "Look at that." And he pointed across the end of there's a little lagoon at the end of Long Lake. And he pointed across the lagoon to exactly, there's a little hillock on the other side.